I've always believed that when someone shows you who they are, you should believe them, but only after they've stripped away the last layer of pretense. For me, that layer came off the morning my son crashed my car. The phone call came from a neighbor, breathless and shaken, telling me there had been an accident just a block away. I didn't panic. I didn't rush out like a madman. I moved slowly, because something deep in my gut told me this wasn't just about twisted metal or busted headlights. This was about to be the moment everything finally broke in our story. Before we dive into the story, we'll love to thank you for your continued support to this channel. If you enjoy this story and stories like this, kindly subscribe and hit on the notification button so you don't miss any of our stories. We will love to hear from you also. Tell us where you're watching from in the comment section. We'll love to give you a shout out in our next video. Now let's begin. When I arrived at the scene, I saw it. My silver sedan crumpled around a street lamp, the hood curled like a question mark. My son was standing beside it with his hands in his pockets, shrugging as if the whole thing were an inconvenience, not a disaster. He didn't say sorry. He didn't even look apologetic. When I asked if he was okay, he just said, "Yeah, I'm good," like I was some distant stranger asking out of politeness. Then he looked at the car and added, "It's just a car, Dad." That sentence punched me in the chest. Not because he wrecked something expensive, but because I realized right then I was the only one in the wreckage grieving the things we both pretended didn't matter. I didn't say much after that. I waited until I got home, sat at the kitchen table, and called the insurance company. My hands trembled as I read out the policy number, already suspecting what they would say. And sure enough, the agent's voice dropped slightly in tone as she informed me the policy had lapsed. Payment missed. Renewal failed. Coverage denied. I thanked her politely and hung up. I stared at the wall for nearly an hour after that call, not because I was angry at the company, but because I knew exactly how my son would respond, and I wasn't wrong. That evening, I told him the truth. "The insurance won't cover anything," I said. "We'll need to figure out another way." He was sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone, barely listening. Then he laughed under his breath and said, "Figures. What else are you good for anymore?" I froze. I genuinely thought I misheard him. But he looked up, eyes as dry as the desert, and said, "I'm serious. You don't bring anything to this house but bills and complaints. Maybe it's time you go figure things out on your own." I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I didn't even ask him to repeat it. I just watched as he walked down the hallway and returned with my small travel bag, already packed. He placed it at my feet like I was a tenant behind on rent. "You'll be fine," he said casually, like I was heading out on a vacation. "You're tough. You'll figure something out." Then he opened the front door, held it with one hand, and said, "No hard feelings. No hard feelings." That's what he said after ejecting me from the home I once bought, furnished, and welcomed him into when he had nowhere else to go. That's what he said after destroying the last thing I had left with my name still printed on it. I picked up the bag, stepped out into the night air, and listened as the door clicked shut behind me. My ears rang with silence. And for a brief moment, I thought maybe this was how some stories ended. With a suitcase in hand, heart shattered, and no one standing behind you to say goodbye. But what he didn't know, what he never even considered, was that I had already seen this moment coming. I had already prepared for the day my son would forget how to love me. And long before he crashed my car, he crashed my trust. That's why I had gone to the courthouse. That's why I'd sat down with a lawyer. That's why, just a month earlier, I had removed his name from the deed of the house he thought he owned. And now, I walked into the night with nothing but that small bag and one quiet truth in my chest. He had thrown out the wrong man. And the next letter he opened would teach him just how deep a father's silence can echo when it's filled with everything a son chose to ignore. I spent that first night in my brother's guest room. The mattress was stiff, the ceiling fan clicked with each rotation, and I couldn't sleep a wink. I kept replaying it in my head, my son's voice, flat and casual, saying I didn't bring anything to the house anymore. that I was a burden, that I needed to figure it out. I stared at the ceiling, wondering how many parents had heard those same words from the mouths they once fed with trembling hands. And yet, beneath the ache in my chest, there was something else blooming quietly: clarity. This wasn't sudden. This wasn't betrayal born overnight. This was the final page of a book that had been writing itself for years. The very next morning, I visited the courthouse, not to begin anything new, but to confirm that what I had done weeks earlier still held power. It did. My lawyer met me with a nod and a folder. Inside were the documents, proof that the house, yes, the very one he had just evicted me from, was mine alone. I had removed his name from the deed after overhearing him on a phone call joking about putting the old man in a home once the mortgage is done. At the time, I told myself it was just a thoughtless remark. But some part of me, the part still grounded in self-respect, decided not to wait for the storm to blow. I reinforced the roof before it even rained. And now? Now the storm had passed, and he didn't realize I was holding the umbrella the entire time. Over the following week, I made quiet moves. I reactivated a dormant mailing address. I ensured the utilities were shifted back into my name. I filed the eviction notice through the proper channels, not out of revenge, but out of principle. I didn't want him homeless. I just wanted him accountable. I had stayed silent long enough while being treated like a ghost in my own story. That silence was ending. The envelope was delivered 3 days later. It was a neat, brown document envelope. Official, impersonal, stamped and sealed. The kind that rarely brings good news. According to the city's service log, he signed for it in person. I imagine he peeled it open expecting a tax notice or a bill. Instead, he found a letter stating that the property had been reassigned under sole ownership and that he was currently an unlawful occupant without a lease or legal standing. He was granted 30 days to vacate or face formal legal proceedings. I didn't call him. I didn't check in. I waited. 2 days passed. Then came the knock. He showed up at my brother's home unannounced, his knuckles pounding the door like an angry drumbeat. My brother gave me a look, half question, half warning. I nodded once, and he opened the door. There he stood, my son, face flushed, letter clutched in his right hand, voice already rising before he even stepped inside. "You can't be serious," he barked. "What the hell is this?" I motioned for him to sit, but he refused. "I'm your son," he said, his voice trembling with disbelief. "You're going to evict your own blood?" I met his eyes and answered calmly. "You're the one who said I didn't belong there." He laughed bitterly. That was in the heat of the moment. "No," I said, my tone flat. That was in the heat of honesty. He paced like a man who'd lost something intangible, something more than a house. "You think this makes you right? That you're somehow teaching me a lesson?" I looked down at my hands before answering. "No, son. I'm not trying to teach you a lesson. I'm just choosing not to be taught by you anymore." That silenced him. For the first time since that car crash, he stood still. No shouting, no bravado, just stillness. He looked at the letter again, and I could see the truth finally settling into his bones. He wasn't the only one capable of cutting someone off. And unlike him, I didn't need to raise my voice to do it. "I didn't think you'd ever go this far," he whispered, almost to himself. I exhaled deeply and said, "Neither did I. But you pushed me there, step by step." We didn't hug. We didn't cry. He walked out with the letter still in his hand, and I stayed seated, heart steady. That night, I slept. Not because everything was fixed, but because something inside me had finally been reclaimed. Not the house, not the car, but my voice. He thought he could take away my dignity. What he didn't know was that I had already built a wall around it, quietly, brick by brick. And now, he was the one standing outside of it, reading my silence like a sentence he never expected to serve. 2 weeks passed, and I didn't hear a thing from him. No phone call, no text, no angry voicemail. Just silence. The kind of silence that follows after someone realizes they've burned the bridge and the ground it stood on. I'd be lying if I said it didn't ache sometimes, especially during the quiet evenings when I sat alone sipping tea in my brother's backyard. I'd watch the wind move through the trees and wonder where things truly went wrong. Was it me? Did I spoil him too much? Did I love him so hard that he mistook my warmth for weakness? Or did he simply grow into a man I never fully understood? But then, one morning, a letter arrived. It wasn't the cold, typed font of a legal notice or a city form. It was handwritten, his handwriting. I recognized the loop in the capital D of Dad. I stared at the envelope for a while before opening it, unsure whether it would contain venom or regret. What I found instead was honesty. Dad, I've spent every night since that letter arrived staring at the ceiling, wondering what the hell I did to deserve this. At first, I was furious. I thought you were being spiteful, that you wanted to get back at me. But after everything settled, I saw it clearly. You didn't do this to hurt me. You did it to protect yourself. You were right. I did treat you like a burden. I stopped seeing you as my father and started seeing you as an obligation. Somewhere along the way, I forgot who you were. I forgot everything you did to make sure I had food on the table and shoes on my feet. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that I get it now. I see it. I see you. If there's ever a way forward, even if it's small, I'll be here. I just hope it's not too late. Jason, I read it 3 times. Not because I didn't believe it, but because every line seemed to come from a place I didn't think he was capable of. It wasn't the words that shook me. It was the reflection. The fact that, for the first time in years, he had stopped to look in the mirror and ask himself how far he had drifted from who he used to be. But I didn't write him back. Not yet. Instead, I drafted something else. A formal lease agreement. 1 year. Fair rent. Clear terms. I wasn't extending a favor. I was offering structure. Because the truth is, I wasn't interested in restoring what we once had. That trust had eroded, and I wasn't sure it could ever fully return. But I could offer him a path forward. One that required accountability, effort, and humility. I enclosed the lease agreement in an envelope and wrote a single line on a yellow sticky note. The door isn't locked, but it's no longer free to walk through. He signed it within days. A few months passed. He kept his end of the lease, paid rent on time, maintained the house. We didn't talk often, but when we did, the sharpness in his tone was gone, replaced by something quieter. Maybe not love, but respect. And that was enough for me, because I'd learned something far more valuable through all of this. Silence is a language, and when spoken from a place of dignity, it echoes louder than screams. It tells the world where your line begins and where others are no longer allowed to cross. He thought he could discard me when I had nothing to give. But what he didn't know, what he never counted on, was that I had already taken back the one thing he relied on the most: control. And when you reclaim your peace, even those who laughed at your silence begin to feel the weight of what it cost them. If this story moved you, let us know in the comments. Have you ever had to reclaim your dignity the hard way? Don't forget to like this video if you believe silence can be powerful, and subscribe for more real, emotional stories like this one. Hit the bell so you never miss a tale that might just reflect your own life. And remember, sometimes walking away isn't weakness. It's the loudest strength of all.